Global news staff of 2,000 journalists in more than 80 bureaus worldwide, and we're very lucky and very pleased to have him with us tonight, because this will be his first time to really address a large group of New York journalists since stepping up to the top job at the Journal. Our celebrity interviewer tonight will be Andy Serwer, the managing editor of Fortune, who is responsible for the magazine, digital media, and conferences. He is also a regular guest on Morning Joe and Squawk Box. Please welcome Gerard Baker and Andy Serwer.
Thank you very much, Alex. Good evening. By the way, this is Jerry, in case you didn't know, and I'm Andy.
The celebrity interview.
Yeah, that's stuck in my throat, too.
Yeah, me too.
Anyway, thank you very much to everyone at the Deadline Club for having us. We're delighted to be here. At least I am. I don't want to speak for you, Jerry.
I'm delighted to be
Okay, good. And congratulations to all the scholarship winners, and congratulations in advance to all the winners of the awards, which we'll get to PDQ, I hope. But first, I want to talk to Jerry a little bit about his new job, which is obviously of great interest to everyone in this room and of course, well beyond. As the new editor, managing editor is the title, but it's the editor-in-chief, as many of you would sort of characterize it, the top editor, of course, of the Wall Street Journal, and the editor-in-chief of Dow Jones, and we can talk a little bit about what that means. So Jerry, you got this job January 1st. At the same time, there was an announcement about the companies, the two companies, News Corp and Fox, being split in two. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. Robert Thompson elevated to the CEO of News Corp, and you assumed his responsibilities. You had been his deputy before that.
Correct.
Subsequent to that announcement in late December, you're getting the job January 1st. You had a series, maybe, I'm reading this in the news, you know, at least 2 town hall meetings with your troops, with the writers and reporters and editors at the Wall Street Journal, where I think you laid out your strategy, your strategic vision, and what you hope to do at the Wall Street Journal. So I'm wondering if you could share with us exactly what you told your troops on those meetings, or at least close to it. What are you going to do with the Wall Street Journal? What's your plans?
Andy, thank you very much indeed. And again, it's a pleasure to be here, and a real delight to be the Deadline Club. And again, congratulations to the scholarship winners and the award winners tonight. I didn't bring my PowerPoint presentation, which I did when I did my town hall meetings, but I could go and get it if you like. So what I talked about and what we talk about at the Journal and Dow Jones is, obviously what our strategic objectives are. But we're the #1 newspaper in the United States. The Wall Street Journal, according to the latest numbers too, just released, the largest paper by circulation in the United States. Our combined print and digital circulation continues to grow, growing by double-digit percentages over year on year. We have, what we've done in the last few years, what Robert Thompson did as managing editor, and I helped him a little bit, and with my colleagues here tonight and others too, is what we will continue to do, what we aim to do with the Journal, which is to ensure that the Journal continues to be the primary dominant newspaper in the world of business, economic, and financial journalism. And we will continue to hold that ground. But at the same time, we believe, and we've demonstrated in the last few years, that we can grow beyond that core, beyond that base, to reach a wider audience, to become in the United States, a national newspaper. I think the newspaper market in the United States is changing, is evolving pretty rapidly, away from perhaps the traditional city newspaper model towards a more European style model, towards more national newspapers. We are the dominant national newspaper, and I think we can continue to grow, and we've done that in the last few years by expanding the reach of our journalism, by expanding what we do in much more general news coverage. We've added many sections to the Journal, and we have done that at the same time, as say, without actually compromising or jeopardizing our standing as the primary business, financial, and economic newspaper. And that's what we'll continue to do, and we'll do that in the US. I think we've got much more opportunity to grow here, even in the the constraints and the confines of of a newspaper market that is obviously challenged, I think we can continue to grow, and we'll grow internationally too. We've done a lot internationally, and we can talk a bit about that. I think we've got lots more opportunities to grow globally. So we are, we're robustly facing what we think is a future of continued growth.
Excellent. So, by the way, I just want to let you all know we'll have time for Q&A. So, if you have any good questions stored up, if I don't get to them, you talked about the Wall Street Journal as a newspaper, which might strike some people as maybe even anachronistic. I mean, the News Corp is going to be a publicly traded company starting July 1st.
July 1.
July 1. Is it a newspaper company? I mean, can you really call it, and do you want to call yourselves a newspaper company?
I'm certainly proud still to be considered a newspaper company, newspaper journalist, but it will be a publisher. It'll be a publishing company. So News Corporation, you know this, I'm sure by now, but has been grown into an enormous media conglomerate over the last 20 years or so. The decision has been made to split off those primarily television entertainment assets into a separate company, which will be called 21st Century Fox. A nice updating of the traditional name of 20th Century Fox, 21st Century Fox.
Oh, that's right.
The traditional publishing, we're pretty smart.
Yeah, you guys.
Exactly. I know. We've the passage of
was
time.
Was that Rupert or I don't?
The passage of time means nothing to us. The publishing assets, which consist primarily of newspapers, the Dow Jones, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, the UK newspapers, Australian newspapers, but of course it also includes HarperCollins, book publisher. It includes the new education division, which is which is a significant investment at the moment. It does also include, rather confusingly, and I won't go into too much detail about it because it's way more corporate information than you need, but it does include some television assets as well in Australia.
Right.
And they will be an important part of the new company too. But the core of the company will be the publishing business, what we think of as traditional publishing business. But of course, I talk about newspapers, you talk about newspapers, we all do. But we talk that we use that terminology. Of course, what we mean these days is the entire experience of engaging with the news in whether it's traditional print or whether it's increasingly through the various digital platforms that we have.
Right. I mean, that's what I was driving at. Of course, was the digital piece, the websites, apps. We can talk about the daily a little bit, which you guys closed down. But what I want to know is, so how's it going in terms of the mix of your businesses, newspapers, digital? Can you talk about the subscriptions and how that's all working? I mean, one subscription to get the paper and the web. Is that succeeding? Are you pleased with where it's going? Where is it going?
Yeah, so we've so the broad picture for the journal at least, and the new company, as I say, will consist of a lot of newspapers as well as some other assets, and there are differing fortunes for those newspapers. We at the journal have seen, as I said at the beginning, very significant circulation growth. Print circulation, as we know, is declining, not dramatically, but sort of there's a steady decline in print circulation, no surprise there. But of course, what we've been able to do is augment that and actually more than substitute for the lost print circulation with digital circulation, both in the US and globally, obviously. And of course, as you well know, the journal, right from the start of the digital age, decided very wisely that it would be appropriate to charge for subscriptions for access to the journal digitally online. So and we've grown that significantly over the last 15 years, and particularly over the last 5 years. So our digital circulation has grown. We charge, as you know now, we do bundling. So as most newspapers have gone into a model where they charge for digital access too. We have a sort of bundle, so you can get a newspaper and the the various digital editions too. Tablets and mobile devices. So that's been very, very strong. I mean, that's the successful part of what we've been doing, which has been the growth in our digital circulation.
Right, and some of those numbers going to be in the prospectus that's coming out? The prospectus that will be out in the next month or so, I have to be a little careful because there are, very strict SEC rules about stuff. Well, you can tell us.
But the numbers we publish, the audited numbers published by, AAM a month ago, are the ones that I'm talking about, which show that, our digital circulation has been growing, significantly, and our revenues, as you could expect, our circulation revenues as a result have grown, pari passu.
And you cut your teeth, Jerry, as being a reporter, a writer, a columnist, an editor. What is it like now managing a news organization with, 2,000 journalists over 80 countries, I think I read?
Right.
I mean, you're all of a sudden a mega manager. What is that like?
Yeah, that's a challenge. I mean, for me, running. I've been a reporter. I started off actually I didn't start off in news at all. I started off in financial markets. I started off as an economist. But as you say, I've been a reporter and a writer for the last 25 years. Deputy editor for the last few years. Yeah, there's a sudden step up in terms of managing. The situation. We're all in the same position. When you get into editorial positions, you unfortunately too much of your attention is distracted and dragged away from doing the real journalism to doing a lot of management stuff. But it's important to do it. I mean, I think I always say to my senior colleagues that it's really important that they make an effort to commit an act of journalism at least once a day, because I think it's important for them to interact, get out, talk to people, because that's ultimately what we do, and what we're trying to do is to report on, to explain, and to interpret the world. So I try and do that. There is a lot of management stuff, and I'm dealing with that, and there's a lot of budgets and various other things you have to deal with, and these things are sent to triers. But in the end, you focus on what you're trying to do, which is just simply to do the best journalism that you can. And I have a great team of editors and reporters, and they help me do that.
So you've lived in the United States, I think, for 20 years. Gotten used to this place?
I'm a big football fan. I've liked the New York Giants for a very, very long time. I have 5 daughters, actually, four of whom were born here, U.S. citizens. 5 so I'm fully signed up. I always like to quote, actually, when I talk about my family, the great actor, another Brit, actually, who came over to America rather earlier age than I did, Cary Grant. The great actor, who he was asked shortly before he died whether he had any regrets in his life. And he said, yes, I do. I've had, in my life, he said, I've had 5 wives and 1 daughter. And I wish it had been the other way around.
Right, yeah.
And I like to think of myself as the man Cary Grant wanted to be.
Not bad.
But we have been, so it's, I've always, from the first time I came to this country, nearly 30 years ago, I've admired and loved it and think it's a great country. And the Wall Street Journal, to be honest with you, has always been at the pinnacle of this country's journalism, and it's a incredible privilege to me to be leading it now.
Anyone ever call you Home Run Baker?
No, they know
who
my
that is?
basketball term, right?
No,
yeah,
baseball.
Something to do with basketball.
It's a baseball guy, right?
But no, they know that I like football.
I fell for that.
That I like football.
Got it. So, talking about your earlier jobs, I think you started at Bank of England, worked at Lloyd's, according to your bio. You also worked at the Beeb. As maybe some of you guys like to call it. Maybe it's an Americanism. Sometimes we get these things wrong. The BBC.
Auntie is called actually in England.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, Auntie is what it's
called.
Auntie. I won't go into the reasons why. It's way too rooted in that strange English male psyche of,
things are happening. Yeah, I'd say. Okay, so the BBC. You also, of course, worked on Fleet Street. 2 places that we've read a lot about that have scandals. Obviously, the BBC. I don't know if you were there with Jimmy Savile and he saw anything that's going on.
No, not guilty. No.
Right, not guilty. No.
I never saw the man.
Fleet Street is probably something closer to your career. Did you ever see anything untoward going on in terms of hacking on Fleet Street and that sort of behavior? And what was it endemic in the culture? I mean, what was that all about?
No, I never saw. Actually, first of all, you're using wonderful anachronisms. Fleet Street, was, of course, everybody's read Scoop by Evelyn Waugh, best book about journalism ever written, will sort of be familiar with Fleet Street, but, newspapers left Fleet Street 30 or 40 years ago.
Right.
And Fleet Street is a generic term, a sort of an abstract term now. But strangely, I never actually worked either on Fleet Street, either physically or figuratively, because I spent all my time in British newspapers actually overseas, either in Japan, either in Asia, or in the United States. No, I mean, so look, British journalism is a very aggressive, competitive, highly energetic and dynamic business. And it plays by a different set of rules from American journalism. One of the things I've always admired about American journalism is that the standards and values associated with American journalism are higher. I mean, that said, the British journalism, because of its competitiveness and because of its dynamism, I think has always been somewhat more irreverent and at times, therefore, somewhat, again, operating by somewhat, I would say, probably, somewhat lower standards. British journalists have never been held in the kind of esteem, I think, that many American journalists have been held in. In fact, you can go back to, there's a very famous line from sometime in the 19th century, just gives you a sense of how British journalists, the sort of esteem in which British journalists have been held for a very long time. There's a famous bit of doggerel by an English writer in the late 19th century who, I think the line goes something like, "You cannot hope to bribe or twist, thank God, the British journalist. But seeing what the man will do unbribed, there's really no need to."
Nice. That's doggerel.
There's always been a bit of that. Look, it's a very high, it's a competitive, aggressive atmosphere in which rules are bent or broken. And what we saw in Britain over the last few years across the board in many newspapers was obviously reprehensible law breaking. I mean, it was carried to a degree that was obviously completely unacceptable. And I certainly never personally witnessed it, but I could see the kind of environment in which that kind of aggressive journalism was transacted.
Does that, and just one more question on that, and not to belabor, but does that still hang over News Corp?
I think a lot has been done in the last 2 years to clean out the problems that were there. The News of the World, which was the paper which was at the core of this, it's a remarkable thing. If you think about what News Corp did, I mean, News of the World, the Sunday newspaper, was the largest circulation newspaper in the UK, and the decision was taken in the wake of the scandal, I mean, literally on a dime, to shut it down, to shut down that operation. As you know, very large numbers of journalists have been arrested. Faced trial, criminal trial. There have been massive civil liabilities that have faced the company, and it's been a traumatizing experience. There's no question about that. But I think the company has done what needed to be done, and has seen it through. And the newspapers are unquestionably stronger now than they were then. And I mean, one thing you should be aware of, though, and I don't know how much people in the US really are aware of, is how much the climate, unfortunately, in the UK has changed, and how much there's been a chilling effect of the response to the hacking issue on the newspaper business. I mean, we just heard Alex just mentioned the issues we've been having here with AP and these First Amendment issues. The environment in the UK, as a result of the public response to the phone hacking issue, is now very, very hostile to free journalism. I mean, we should be aware of that. It is extreme. There's going to be a regulatory system that will oversee the way what journalists can do, but there's also a very aggressive law enforcement process underway in which journalists are essentially now no longer really feel free to kind of pursue the sort of journalism that is really necessary for a free society. So it's a really...
So you think there's been a bit of a backlash that's gone too far?
No question at all. I mean, I'll give you a very good example. Recently, a police officer who was responsible for a significant department in the Metropolitan Police, who was running the counter-terrorism, a part of the counter-terrorism department in the Metropolitan Police, was so furious that so many police resources had been transferred from her department to investigate phone hacking at News Corp and other news organisations, that she called up a newspaper editor, the News of the World, or the Sun it was then, and said, said, "I want to tell you about this story. This is a terrible thing that's going on. There is, resources are being transferred. This is ridiculous. It's got totally out of proportion." The editor, the newspaper, the desk editor who picked up the phone claims that the police officer asked for payment for a story. She denies that. She emphatically denies it. But the court found that she was then prosecuted for corruption in public office. It was her word against the word of the Sun editor, and in a strange inversion of the kind of usual way of these things, the word of the Sun editors was believed over the word of the police officer. That police officer is serving a prison sentence. No money. Everybody agrees. No money changed hands. hands. The police officer is now serving a prison sentence for corruption in public office.
Well,
This is the kind of atmosphere, unfortunately, that is prevalent.
But
now.
you could argue that the backlash itself is collateral damage from the bad behavior.
Of course,
So,
there's no defense whatsoever of what was done, and there will be people, there have already been people who are serving prison sentences, more I suspect. There will certainly be a lot of criminal proceedings still to come. Nobody's for a second defending what was done. What was done was completely unacceptable and inexcusable, but all I'm saying is there has been now, as there often is in these circumstances, a backlash, a response that is actually disproportionate to the original crime.
All right. Well, speaking of bad behavior, let's talk about another news organization, Jerry. What about Bloomberg? And what seems to have transpired there? What's your take on that? It's rather curious, isn't it?
It's the Bloomberg is is an interesting organization. They've been very successful in producing their financial survey. I mean, amazingly successful. I mean, Dow Jones Newswise is part of what I'm responsible for, and they've given us more than a run for our money over the years. They've been incredibly successful and very good, and they've done a lot of very, very good journalism. I think all I would say, and we don't know yet exactly the scale of this. I suspect more will come out. Other companies, other financial institutions are trying to find out exactly what Bloomberg reporters had access to and what they knew, and we'll see what happens. But obviously the lesson for all of us there, and it applies to phone hacking, it applies to Bloomberg, it applies to what happened to the New York Times in the wake of the Jason Blair event, is trust, and is what happens when. All we function on as news organizations, as journalists, all we really have, the currency of what we do is trust. And if you jeopardize that trust, if you compromise that, you risk losing that trust, then you lose what you have. And, it takes an awfully long time to repair it. Again, we don't know the extent of the damage that will happen at Bloomberg or indeed any of these other organizations, but that, look, we all have an obligation as journalists to protect that trust. It's a sacred compact between us and our readers, and we have an obligation to do what we can to make sure that it's maintained.
Okay, just another question or two before I throw it out to the audience. So the articles in the Wall Street Journal are shorter. There's an extensive study at the Columbia Journalism.
I was very grateful for that study. I think it's very, very important that we.
Very extensive study that showed that the articles are shorter. The news, you said yourself, is more general news, and possibly at the expense of business news. But you would disagree with that? Okay. But definitely there's an orientation towards general, a very conscious one. Is the news slanted more to a conservative perspective?
Not at all, no. I mean, I think we continue to be, the journal's great strength has been, for all newspapers it's true, but I think it's really true in the case of the Journal because of its, unique role that it plays in the financial, has played historically in the financial system, in the economic business of American life, is its objectivity and its trustworthiness and its fairness, its accuracy and its reliability. And we've striven very hard to maintain that, and we continue to do that. There's no point in us kind of taking a partisan view because ultimately that's not going to be in our business interest. And I would say, just on your point about what we've done and whether or not by extending the Journal's agenda to a broader audience and whether or not that has been undermining of our core mission. I mean, I do dispute that. What's happened at the Journal in the last 4 or 5 years is not that we have shifted resources, space away from business news towards general news. It's been additive. I mean, the News Corporation acquired Dow Jones just over 5 years ago and decided to invest in Dow Jones, invest in the Wall Street Journal, and look at what we've done in the last. We've added. I hope many of you. I hope you're all readers of the Wall Street Journal. But if you're not, I'll go through. And we've added so much content. When other newspapers have been shrinking, we've been expanding. We've added a magazine, which which has become very successful, which covers all kinds of features and news that the journal didn't traditionally do. We've changed the weekend package so that we have Off Duty, a kind of lifestyle and consumer-focused supplement, and Review, which is a much more serious, ideas-focused supplement. We've added Mansion, the real estate section here in New York. Obviously, we've added the Greater New York section, which has been a tremendous addition to what we've done. We added, WSJ Money. We've done all of that. We've added to our core coverage, which has been, again, I would argue, incredibly successful in expanding the reach of the journal and making the journal available to a broader audience than it has reached before, without in any way jeopardizing what we've done in our core coverage. And, whether it's breaking stories as we've done in the last year on, the insider trading, whether it is doing, some of the incredible reporting we've done on the threat to privacy in this country from, in the digital age, whether it's what we've done in our reporting on China, whether it's what we've done in our reporting on, disease and, particularly on tuberculosis and the spread of tuberculosis, whether it's the kind of quality analysis that you get heard on the street, or whether it is the kind of just the sheer daily volume of news, of business news that we break. We haven't abandoned that core area at all. What we've done is we've been able to keep that core area and to expand it to reach a broader audience.
Okay, so the two takeaways then are the historical balance, if you will, of the journal has been, it's a conservative editorial page, there's no question about that.
Wouldn't disagree with that.
Right, but the news has the same tone, the same balance that it has always had historically. And the other part is, while you've now expanded into general coverage, you haven't decreased the amount of business news because you've added pages to them.
Right.
Okay, great. Any questions? Can I throw it out to the audience? I'm sure you have some things to ask Jerry. We've got something right over here from this. Is that Mike? Do you want to wait for the mic, Mike?
Sorry.
Wow.
Myron Kandel, formerly of CNN. Do you think the Obama administration is leveling a serious threat at investigative reporting by the actions it's taken against supposed leaks in the because of what it says are threats to national security?
Good question.
Well, it's obviously the action against the AP is troubling. I mean, it's kind of confusing at the moment because on the one hand, obviously they come out with the, it is revealed that they've taken this very aggressive surveillance action against the AP, while literally the next day they come out in strong support of a press shield law in the Congress. So I think they're trying to have it both ways. Look, I think the evidence is pretty clear. This is not, I don't think this is opinion, I think this is verifiable fact. This administration has been much more aggressive in pursuing certainly leaks, leaks of sensitive information, much more aggressive against the press in that, I think, than any previous administration. I think that's indisputable. Now, look, we all have to be sensitive, obviously, to, we're all responsible journalists, as well as believing very firmly in First Amendment rights and in the freedom of the press. We also have to acknowledge that there are very important national security issues here, and we always understand that. But I think it is quite striking that this administration has pursued this so aggressively, whether it's fundamentally undermining the ability of news organizations to conduct investigative journalism. We'll see. I mean, my sense is that certainly we are not cowed at the Wall Street Journal. I don't think other news organizations are. We'll continue to pursue investigations. We'll continue to pursue, the truth, even in the teeth of this kind of action. So I think we have to be robust. We have to stand up and continue to pursue this kind of journalism, and we'll see whether or not the support of the shield law by the administration, or the going after surveillance of AP is the one that ultimately wins out.
Point. Question over here, I think. Coming.
Right here?
Yeah, the microphone's coming.
It's okay.
Nope.
Hi, I'm Dan Roberts with Fortune. I know this is old hat, but the Daily interested me so much, and I just wonder if we could hear more from you about what the company learned from doing it.
Yeah, good question too.
Well, I mean, it is a good question. I don't have a very good answer, unfortunately. I'm with Dow Jones.
This is the daily newspaper, the daily online newspaper.
Daily, which was launched a couple of years ago. It was actually a tablet-only newspaper called the Daily, which was visually stunning and very successful, very elegant, very elegantly produced. It was it was described by some as a kind of a digital age, Life magazine. It was visually very compelling. Its business model was unfortunately not very successful. It wasn't able to generate the kind of revenue from either subscriptions or single copy sales that would be necessary to keep it going. I think, again, what I was going to say is that, I'm the editor of Dow Jones, the Wall Street Journal. Although we have good fraternal relations with all of our colleagues in News Corporation, I don't have any input into what they do, and they don't have any input into what I do. But I suppose, the less, if looking at it just as an observer, looking at what the lesson might be, it's that I think that we developed a Wall Street Journal edition for tablets very early on. We were one of the first to have an iPad edition, and it was very successful. There is, it seems to me, there remains, despite the ultimate failure of the Daily, the ultimate closure of the Daily, there remains a real opportunity there for that kind of content presented in that way on tablets, and taking advantage of all the new digital opportunities that exist. And I think that there are specific issues that people may have with the Daily, but I think it was, in that sense, it was a pathfinder in that it was trying to bring the traditional newspaper experience into the digital field. Now, I would say I think we've managed to do that with the Wall Street Journal. I think other news organizations do it with their tablet editions too. But that, I think that sort of leap to be a digital-only, an iPad-only, a tablet-only product, maybe was just at that point a leap too far.
Yeah, I mean, it may have been ahead of its time. Also, you're sort of had a competitive product internally and essentially then as well.
Right.
And I think all of us have sort of discovered, maybe some of us in this room, that the tablet apps, I should say, of our products can often be incredibly beautiful and compelling, but it certainly hasn't been a silver bullet, at least right away for anyone. I think that's probably fair to say. But we're all sort of working on them and kind of experimenting and figuring it out. Any other questions out there? I guess I've just got one last question then to ask you, Jerry, and that is, I mean, it's sort of an old chestnut, but so what's the world going to look like, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, in terms of the paper and digital in the Wall Street Journal?
Well, the Wall Street Journal circulation would be about 25 million, I think, in the US.
That's that extrapolation thing, right?
As much as, I come from a generation, obviously, as you can tell, that loves newspapers, that grew up with the traditional printed newspaper. I'm still very attached to it. Obviously, I read all those printed newspapers every day, and many of us here are of that generation too. But we also acknowledge that generation is passing, and that era of printed newspapers is disappearing. And I think that, I think we can just expect. Again, I think we have an opportunity, and I'm sorry to keep, making the point about the journal. I think we have an opportunity still to grow our circulation of the journal, even in a shrinking market. But no doubt the overall market for printed newspapers is shrinking. Whether that means, however, that, and this is where I resolutely refuse to concur with the sort of general gloom that seems to descend upon our business. Whether that means that just terminal decline for the news business, I beg to differ. I think we have I think that there will continue to be a really strong demand supported by people willing to commit resources, money to pay for that, for high quality, authoritative, fair, objective, and reliable journalism, news, reporting, analysis, comment, and context that trusted news brands can provide. I think we'll continue to do. Whether it will be primarily digital in 10 years' time, I've absolutely no doubt about that. It might even be exclusively digital in 10 years' time. And things are moving so rapidly, we may be in that field. I think there will be more and more. Clearly, I think the path of the evolution of the news business is probably toward, the evolution of content generally is towards more specialized and kind of niche programming, if you like, and I think there will be more and more, the survivors in this and the thrivers in this will be those that have mastered the ability to produce content, whether it's business news, finance news, whether it's sports, whether it's a certain type of opinion, whether it's ideologically based opinion. I think that's clearly where people, there's a disaggregation from the traditional general newspaper model towards more specialized segments of the news, and I think there will be more of that. But I think the idea that there will just somehow be some kind of Tower of Babel like news medium in which just anything goes and anybody will be able to say anything and nobody will pay for anything, I just think is, again, maybe this is just the hopeless, optimistic romantic in me, but I don't think that's likely. I think people will need, for a good, effective, functioning democracy and for society to continue to operate in the way that we all believe it should do, I think people will need high quality, reliable information and they'll be willing to pay for it. And I think, I think we're very well placed to deliver it.
Really terrific, and I really appreciate that you're kind of in a tricky spot. Only been in the job for a few months, and you've got your the split off happening July 1st. So we really appreciate you coming and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
Join me in thanking Gerard Baker.